Brochure, prepared an abstract, and immediately emailed to it. Dr. Betsy, of course, she read my abstract and she gave me a chance to present my paper at that seminar. Since then, I have been in touch with her. And also, when I approached her about my doctoral studies, she read and she commented on my research proposal. And at the same time, she supported me in all my academic endeavors. And I can still feel the motherly love, warmth, and affection. So, simply put, she's the reason for everything I am and everything I will be. So that's why I agreed to give this lecture. So, Betsy ma'am, with your permission. Yeah. So my paper is titled "Understanding Rivalry." Uh, the psychology of human relationships. Yeah. Reading jealousy in Karnad's broken images. So I'll begin with a story. I hope you are familiar with Maupassant. So Maupassant's short story, The Confession, there is one character called Marguerite. So the younger sister in Maupassant's The Confession, she confesses on her deathbed. I quote, I was jealous. I became crazy. I said to myself, he shall not marry Susan. I will not have it. It is I whom he will marry when I am grown up. I shall never find anyone whom I love so much. So Maupassant's short story, The Confession, tells the story of two sisters, Susan and Marguerite. So Marguerite lives with Susan, whose fiancé had disappeared on the eve of Susan's wedding. On her deathbed, Marguerite unwraps her mind. Her deathbed confession is something disastrous that happened more than 40 years ago. She had killed the fiancé 40 years ago out of jealousy. Margaret loved Lamper a lot and she was unable to stand the thought of Susan marrying him. So, in fact, it is human, very human to be jealous, and jealousy, the green eyed monster, as Shakespeare called it, occupied her mind, and she began to hate him dreadfully. Consequently, her hate brewed vengeance, infuriating her to commit such a heinous crime. She spent her whole life expiating her crime and she confesses it. So, generally speaking, literature focuses on human relationships. It addresses both the constructive and destructive relationships between people and their emotions. So Maupassant's story shed light on one of the age-old phenomena, rivalry among siblings. So in the Bible, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and other similar texts, traditions, and cultures, we can find rivalry stories among siblings. For instance, the stories of Cain and Abel, Leah and Rachel, Jacob and Esau in the Bible, Sugriv and Bali in the Ramayana, conflicts between Pandavas and Kauravas in the Mahabharata, clashes between Osiris and Seth in Egyptian mythology, Romulus and Remus in Roman mythology, and so on. Similarly, we can see many instances of literary representation of sibling rivalry. For example, Shakespeare's King Lear, As You Like It, Taming of the Shrew. And other literary examples of sibling rivalry are Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility, then Pride and Prejudice, Dostoevsky's Brothers of Karamazov, Steinbeck's East of Eden, Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, then Shirley Jackson's We Have Always Lived in the Castle, then Jhumpa Lahiri's The Lowland, and so on. So, however, Karnad's Broken Images also addresses the sibling relationship and focuses on its destructive side. So, concerning this paper, it focuses on the diverse human relationships in broken images to study the contention and conflict in the interactions of characters that result in jealousy and rage, leading to hate, animosity, and sinful actions. Um, Over the past 5 decades, Karnad has been recognized nationally and internationally as one of the preeminent playwrights in contemporary India. So he has not restricted his creative genius to literary writings only. He's an actor, playwright, director, critic, translator, and has written scripts for many movies. So his exceptional genius lies in his approach towards his dramatic art. So while his contemporaries, Tendulkar and Badal Sarkar, they explore into the psyche of middle class life. But Karnad delves deep into Indian culture for his themes. So we know that he began his career as a playwright with the Ayadi in 1961, then followed Tughlaq in 1964, and Tughlaq established Karnad as a dramatist. Subsequently, he published Hayavadana, then Bali the Sacrifice, Nagamandala, Taledenda, then Fire and the Rain, Dreams of Tipu Sultan, then Wedding Album, then Boiled Beans on Toast, and his last play is Crossing to Talikota, Rakshasa Tangadi. And the monologues are flowers and broken images. He writes in Kannada and then translates his own works into English. So this one act play, this monologue, Broken Images, it's a play about human relationships. So it articulates the relationship of the sisters between Manjula and Malini. And it also focuses on more relationships, the husband and wife relationship between Manjula and Pramod, then the camaraderie of Pramod and Malini, the friendship between Pramod and Lucy, the amity between Lucy and Manjula. So, besides, it also conveys the relationship exists between regional language writers and Indian English writers in the literary scenario as well. So, I would say the relationship between Manjula and Malini acts as a metaphor for this the relationship between Bhasha writers and Indian English writers. Okay, so it is a fact that rivalries are prevalent in different fields in our society and abound at all levels of human interaction. So, over the past few years, scholars have made significant advances in enhancing our understanding of the causes of the initiation, escalation, and termination of rivalry. For example, Baldwin, he studies a rivalry meticulously and he defines three main types of rivalry: biological rivalry, then personal or conscious rivalry, then commercial and industrial rivalry. Then Kilduff, Elfenbein, and Stowe, they distinguish rivalry as a subjective competitive relationship. Then, with the advent of psychoanalysis, scholars delve deep into rivalry and study variant forms. Also, the developments in psychoanalysis place considerable emphasis on sibling rivalry. I know, I hope you are familiar with the name David M. Levy. He is a pioneer in child psychiatry and he introduced the term sibling rivalry. And this term was introduced in the year 1930. So, the word sibling, it denotes brothers and sisters. Then what about sibling rivalry? So sibling rivalry it refers to the feelings of envy, jealousy, and competitiveness that exist between brothers and sisters within the family. So besides the competition for status, objects, and achievement, siblings also compete for the love and attention of their parents. And this sibling rivalry, it is indeed uh, a universal human phenomenon. Um, the story of Cain and Abel, that is perhaps the most famous example of sibling rivalry. So, the quarrel of Cain and Abel, the noted critic Turner writes, quote, has gone from generation to generation. From the beginning of time down to our own. His hatred for Abel is renewed from generation to generation. So, this biblical narrative of Cain and Abel, we can say that a second account of the fall of man. And this time, it's It is a result of jealousy. And this story we can read as the jealousy between two young men. So the biblical narrative goes this way. So Cain hates his brother because he thinks that God loves him less than Abel. And both Cain and Abel, they made sacrifices to God. And Cain brought of the fruit of the ground, and Abel brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat as offering to the God. And God accepted Abel's worship and rejected Cain's. So, out of jealousy, instigated by rage and fury, Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and slew him. So, Tucker opines that this sibling conflict and aggression are an integral part of family life. So, the only reason behind the terrible act committed by Cain and Margaret in Maupassant's The Confession is jealousy. So these narratives, Keynes and Abel, and the short story, The Confession, and even other novels, plays, and short stories, they say that jealousy coincides with hostility, rage, and revenge. So this Cain syndrome, jealousy, is apparent in the relationship between Manjula and Malini. So, as Marguerite unwraps her mind in Maupassant's story, Manjula reveals herself to the television image. I quote, I have always been reconciled to being the second best. So, Manjula admits that I was a shallow woman, a pretentious mediocrity, a gushy, a she says that she is um, conniving, a devious relative who had taken her sister for her inheritance. So, this is what she says to the image on that TV. So, she says that she was a shallow woman. So, she is revealing herself to that image. So the background goes this way. I mean the drama background. So that play, Broken Images, it sets in a TV channel, Sri TV channel studio, and the protagonist Manjula Naik, she was invited to give a brief presentation introducing the film version of her best-selling book, The River Has No Memories. So that's a plot. She is invited to that channel to give a presentation of her best-selling novel, The River Has No Memories. So this protagonist, Manjula Naik, she is a celebrated short story writer who was a lecturer in English at a college in Bangalore until a year ago. So she surprised the world with her debut novel, The River Has No Memories, because it turned out to be a bestseller, and the advance she got for that novel made headlines in India and the West. So when she prepares to leave the set at the end of her 10 to 15 minutes speech, her image on the monitor televising her presentation continues to talk. So at first, she gets scared and she starts talking to her image on the television. So the television image, her conscious make an attempt to question her act and her bogus identity. And in the course of their conversation, the audience could see Manjula's inner world and her life that are full of pain, frustration, jealousy, betrayal, and agony. So Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, the Austrian neurologist, he observed that sibling relationship first and foremost in terms of rivalry for parental love. So according to Sigmund Freud, feelings of enmity towards brothers and sisters must occur more frequently during childhood. So he emphasizes that the elder child has intense, jealous, and strong competitive emotional states when the next child is born into the family. So, in his essay, The Dream, he writes, the little child does not necessarily love his brothers and sisters. He does not. He hates his rivals. So, in interpretation of dreams, again, Freud says that the hostility among siblings originated even during childhood or has always existed. The older child has ill-treated the younger, slandered it, deprived it of its toys, and the younger has been consumed by helpless fury against the elder, has envied it and feared it. So, uh, the rivalry of siblings, it stems from different factors. In many cases, the treatment of parents for children causes rivalry among siblings. And this is intensified to an intolerable level when children became aware of their parental favoritism. For various reasons, the sororal bond between Manjula and Malini is by no means a smooth one. So, Malini, her younger sister, was physically challenged and she suffered from what is technically called uh, meningomyelocele. Uh, the upper part of her body was perfectly normal. Below the waist, the nervous system was damaged, completely dysfunctional. So, her entire life was confined to the wheelchair, and she was the apple of her parents' eyes. And she is the main focus of attention. So Manjula recalls, quote, when she was old enough to go to school, a teacher came home to teach her English and mathematics. Everything else she read up for herself, history, philosophy, anatomy. And her parents left Manjula with her grandparents. And the grandparents, we know that they are not substitute for one's parents. So, uh, um, similar to Sigmund Freud, one another person called Neubauer, another psychoanalyst. So he argues that sibling rivalry derives from competition among siblings for the exclusive or preferred care from person they share. So, uh, siblings compete for preferred care from their caretaker. So, the most cherished moments of Manjula's life were the days she spent with her parents during holidays. So, parental care and affection, uh, that's one of the reasons for sibling rivalry. And that is not the only reason for sibling rivalry, sibling conflict. Sometimes the sibling, they often compete for resources, including time and attention of parents, then financial assets, material possession of the family. So in the play, we can see that when Manjula finished her college, she found a job in Bangalore and she came to live with her parents. And Malini lives with her parents in Koromangal. And while in Bangalore, Manjula met Pramod, and soon she married him, and they settled down in a place called Jayanagar. And these two places, Kormangala and Jayanagar, they tell a lot because Kormangala is one of the premium areas in Bangalore. It involves wealth, big house, garden, then the sense of space. Whereas Jayanagar is a traditional middle class residential area. So even to the division of family property and money among them, she felt the same dejection and discrimination. So another common cause of sibling rivalry is competition. And Manjula believes that Malini surpassed her in all areas, in appearance and intelligence. So Manjula had to accept second place at all times and was constantly ignored. So, due to her constant dejection and second position in life, Manjula is jealous of Malini. Then, after her parents' death, Malini moved to Jayanagar with Manjula and Pramod, and she died a couple of months before the book was released. Thus, as Manjula wrote her first novel, she dedicated it to her sister's memory. So, her novel, The River Has No Memories, is based on her lame sister. So, she affirms that Malini, her beautiful, gentle sister, is the only character in the novel drawn from life, and other characters and the plot are entirely fictional and um, invented. Um, so, we can see that Manjula, who is devoid of parental affection, care, and even parental love. Um, Over these years, like Cain, accumulates rage, hatred, vengeance, anger, rage, envy, and jealousy. So Kruger notes that sibling conflicts they assume a destructive quality. So especially if they persist and become more intense or frequent. So even though Manjula obeyed the Latin saying, like, de mortuis nil nisi bonum. I mean, uh,
Oh, sorry for the disturbance, Atira. Something has happened to your screen. You're raising your hand.
okay,
It's okay.
yeah,
Please continue on it.
yeah. So, um, so she obeyed the Latin saying, "Say nothing but good of the dead," in her television presentation. Um, Later, she discloses to the television image that I hated the cripple. I had always hated her. I was only waiting for her to die. So that's her uh, inner thoughts. So her constant dejection, her second position in life, her hatred and jealousy of Malini ultimately led her to steal and publish the novel of Malini. So Manjula says that she didn't write the novel, Malini wrote it. Every word of it, every word in that novel was written by Malini. And this woman, Manjula, she found this script in her laptop, and after her death, she found a draft of the novel, and she found that it was a very brilliant and a masterpiece. So, as a writer, one could never dream of such heights, that passion, that clarity, that insights, that control. It's a work of genius. So, this woman, brewed with jealousy and rage, like Cain, waited for the right moment to strike. So, she published that novel, her sister's novel, in her name, and she won in that competition. So, Manjula's act of stealing Malini's identity, her creativity, her language, is her revenge caused by her years of agony, frustration, and anguish. So, this is uh, the sorroral relationship between, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ the sorroral bond between Manjula and Malini. Not a positive one, it's destructive. It's a total negative one. Then moving on the other relationship, moving on to Lucy, Manjula, and Pramod's friendship, and Malini, Pramod, and Manjula's camaraderie in the play, it is evident that jealousy plays a vital role in this three-party relationship. And in this three-party relationship, one is perceived as a rival in the tripartite relationship. So I would like to mention one philosopher here, Descartes. So he is regarded as a father of modern philosophy. And he defines jealousy as a species of fear, a species of fear, because uh, this is related to desire. So we have to preserve ourselves, the possession of something. So if you believe that you are going to lose a you are going to lose that thing, there is a kind of fear around you. അല്ലെങ്കിൽ there is a sort of fear. Uh, uh, yeah, there is a sort of fear around you, and you experience that same fear. And Descartes points out that that species of fear is jealousy. And Spinoza, another radical philosopher, he says that this is a kind of vacillation of mind, born of love and hatred. So, I mean, love and hatred. Love is joy and hatred is sad. So jealousy is that vacillation of mind born of love and hatred. Then again, the contemporary psychologists, White and Mullen, they say that jealousy is a complex of thoughts, emotions, and action that follows loss of something, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ threat of losing something, or threat of losing a romantic relationship. And Ben Siv, another contemporary uh, psychoanalyst, defines jealousy as the fear of losing something that we already have to someone else. So it's a fear. It's something negative. This jealousy. So from Descartes to Benson, everyone says that jealousy comes from the fear of losing someone or something you love. So if you analyze jealousy carefully, it is a three-party relationship. It involves competition, a specific competition with a third party. And uh, this third party relationship consists of the individual, then his or her uh, relationship partner, and a third party. And if we read carefully, this three party relationship is obvious in Lucy, Manjula, Pramod's friendship, and Malini, Pramod, and Manjula's camaraderie. So I'll explain Lucy, Manjula, and Pramod's part. Um, so the amity between Lucy and Manjula is affected by Pramod's entry. So Lucy and Manjula, they are thick friends. They are close friends, and their relationship is affected by Pramod. So actually, Pramod is a very simple-minded man, a very a gentleman, and he met Manjula in Bangalore, and she was attracted to her. Unfortunately, this man, he was unable to convey his feelings to her. Therefore, he wrote a letter to Lucy. Please note it. He wrote a letter to Lucy, Manjula's close friend, telling that how Manjula tortured him. Then he wrote a second letter addressing to um, Manjula, and it's about Lucy. And he tried the old trick of exchanging letters. So Lucy got Manjula's letter, and Manjula got the other letter, and both of them confronted him. And Lucy tore her letter and threw the pieces on him and went away angrily. And this act of Lucy is a result of jealousy arises from the belief that Manjula's relationship with Pramod threatens their friendship. So Lucy stopped talking to Manjula after that incident, and she was still unmarried. And eventually, Pramod confessed his love of Manjula, and he married her. And she knew that, Manjula knew that she could not get a man of that caliber. Uh, she says that women found Pramod attractive because he's an intelligent man, a warm man, a lovable man, a fun-loving, fond of practical jokes, noble and simple. So she knows that she will not get such a man. So she took uh, what? Uh, I mean, that chance. So she got a chance, and uh, she took that chance, and she married Pramod. And Pramod, actually, he is a software uh, wizard, and he has usually worked from home. And he came into Malini's life like a storm because he is the only man in Malini's life. And for Manjula, it was a relief that Pramod and Malini, they had become great friends. But in fact, she was jealous of their camaraderie. So she says that their friendship bothered her a lot. And the irritation it caused made her made her try some experiments. So after she returned from college, she would bang in the door, and then she would find both of them absorbed in their work. And sometimes, if she came quietly, she would always find them in serious discussion. So such moments made her feel that that is not her home. So she believes that, I quote, I am an intruder here, someone external to the soul of this house, along with the cook, the maid, and the nurse. And also, there were moments she wondered, God, if he was fantasizing about having Malini instead of Manjula in bed with him. So all these events, Malini initially separated Manjula from her parents, faced discrimination in the allocation of wealth and assets, and now she is close to Pramod. All these events forced Manjula to form the opinion that there was something insidious in the way she had taken over her home. And her rivalry um, is similar to a state of clandestine struggles for power, love, prestige, recognition, and financial prosperity. So Manjula's jealousy of Malini is the only reason for the destruction of the romantic platonic relationship between Manjula and Pramod that later leads to a marriage collapse. And after Malini's death, she found the typescript printed and arranged neatly inside Pramod's drawer because he had kept it safe, but in vain. She read the novel and was devastated to find herself recreated as a cousin. Her portrayal was very rancorous. She portrayed as a devious relative who had taken her in for her inheritance. So, what Malini experienced during those 6 years in Manjula's house is reflected in the novel. And Manjula believed that even Pramod actually knew what was written because Malini and Pramod they had many discussions of it, and probably they have Malini had shared the script with uh, Pramod to read and comment on. So this revelation made her so jealous and hated Malini more. And it also forced a reveal to the image that I was only waiting for her to die. So the hate and suspicion that distinguish most rivalries is the cause of antagonism. Then, so publishing that novel, that's the only way to win a victory over a rival. So if someone else publishes it, everyone will see who the venomous first cousin is. So it is true that Levy points out rivalry is rooted in purposeful and calculated pursuit of one's goals. So she subsequently sent the typescript to the publisher. They replied, and Pramod received the email. He took a printout of the email and placed it on the kitchen table. For that, she faced Pramod with a series of questions. Um, she asked that, how can you accuse me of plagiarism? Are you implying I knowingly stole my sister's novel and so on? And Pramod became so angry, and I mean, he had never been so angry. And that topic that was never ever mentioned in that family. And they began to live entombed in silence. And as soon as the press knew about her success, the enormous advance, the rave reviews, the media invaded her house, and it was too late to do anything at all. And Manjula was inundated with invitations to public functions, cultural events, then literary conferences, and so on. And Pramod never accompanied her on her tours. And unexpectedly, one day, Lucy made a call. And Pramod started inviting her out to dine in expensive restaurants in the evenings. And they never talked about Manjula. He cracked jokes, and they are carefully selected, polished, tabulated, and fitted into the larger narrative. They discussed other things about his job, about the world around him, and Lucy enjoyed those evenings with Pramod extremely. And one day, she asked Manjula whether he tells her jokes. And for that, her reply is uh, as a typical one, no. He may have in the earlier days of marriage, but not anymore. But this Pramod, he cracks jokes with Lucy. And the last message Manjula got from Lucy is that, I quote, if you don't mind, I would like to continue the evening. So please don't question him. So Lucy wants to spend her time with Pramod, and Pramod does not want to spend um, his time with Manjula. And later, Manjula resigned her job, and people came to see her all the time, and that greatly disturbed Pramod. and he started to complain about stupid issues, and later promote moved to United States of America, and he is working as a software engineer in Los Angeles. And when the novel was released in United States of America with a lot of fanfare, he never came to meet Manju, and he did not ask her to come to his place. Instead, he sent an email of congratulation and an apology that he could not get leave to attend that function. So the rift in their relationship is very visible. Then the third part is that the relationship between Mahasha writers and Indian English writers. And it is a fact that the rivalries among writers is not new, and it arises from jealousy. History has witnessed many such verbal and literal wars of the writers. So even in their own time, the rivalry and hatred between Byron and Keats contested a lot. So Byron's long narrative poem, Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, was a great success, and he enjoyed all the benefits of a celebrity, while Keats's works were frequently attacked by the critics of the age. And Keats believes that my name uh, with the literary fashionables is vulgar. I am a weaver boy to them. Maybe because of that status, Byron enjoyed so much privilege, and Keats was criticized a lot. And later, Keats, in a letter to George and Georgiana Keats, writes, quote, "You speak of Lord Byron and me. There is this great difference between us. He described what he sees. I describe what I imagine. And mine is the hardest task. You see the immense difference." So Keats's response to uh, this is Keats's response to the status that or the privilege that Byron enjoyed that time. Then a combination of jealousy, alcohol, and money ripped Ernest Hemingway and Scott Fitzgerald. Then the Nobel laureates, Derek Walcott and V.S. Naipaul, uh, they were also part of this literary war. So Naipaul, in his book, A Writer's People, actually that book is noted for, it's gone for several notable authors. And in that book, he described Walcott as a man whose talent has been all but strangled by his colonial setting. And the Walcott, he already named his literary rival as V.S. Nightfall in his poem, The Spoiler's Return. And he read some poems at the Calabash Literary Festival, Jamaica in 2008. And the final poem is The Mongoose. So if you get some time, read this poem, The Mongoose. And the audio is available in YouTube. And if you read this poem, Mongoose, you can see that how V.S. Naipaul Walcott brutally derided Naipaul's work and character. So, I mean, the audio is available in YouTube. Please listen to this poem, The Mongoose. So, yeah. Then it is even more nasty, the feud between Salman Rushdie and John Updike. I mean, the clashes between their novels, Shalimar the Clown and The Terrorist. So, John Updike wrote a review about Shalimar the Clown in The New Yorker, and uh, Rushdie wrote a write-up on Updike's novel, The Terrorist. So, if you get some time, read both reviews, and they are available in New Yorker, and you can see how nasty the fight between Salman Rushdie and John Updike. So, there are a lot of stories, incidents about rivalry between writers, and perhaps they are jealous of their talent of other writers, sometimes of success, or even associate and acquaintances. Even the writers who write about human emotions, however, cannot escape from the Cain syndrome, the green-eyed monster jealousy. Um, so, In this play, we can see that the unfriendliness Manjula experienced from different corners of the Kannada literary circle for writing her debut novel in English owes to Shashi Deshpande, because Shashi Deshpande confronted the same questions in the writers' conference in Nimran. And Karnad takes this as the basis for this play, and he gives a rejoinder to the critics who accuses him of writing in English. So in a way, this is self-admittedly autobiographical in nature, this part. So the idea is that the tussle between one's own mother tongue and the language of literary expression remains a complicated and an unresolved issue in India. Um, so in Karnad's case, he is a polyglot, and he said in an interview that, I quote, I have become a bilingual writer over the years through various processes. My mother tongue is Konkani, but I grew up in speaking Kannada, whereas I speak only in English with my wife and children, though they know Kannada. So choosing the language of literary expression has always been a highly debated critical issue in India. So in the play, we can see that Manjula's debut English novel, The River Has No Memories, became so popular. And in her presentation, she wants to address two questions. She wants to address two questions often she come across and attempts to explain them in that presentation. So the second question is about the character in that novel, uh, the disabled woman. So for that, uh, Manjula responds that the disabled character is modeled after her own younger sister. And the first question is the language of her literary expression. So the question goes this way. After having written in Kannada all your life, why did you choose suddenly to write in English? Do you see yourself as a Kannada writer or an English writer? What audience do you write for? And variations on that theme. So intellectuals she respected, writers who were gurus to her, and her friends strongly criticized Manjula for writing her debut novel in English rather than her native tongue. So many writers encounter this question: why did not she or he write in her or his native tongue? So this tussle, as Varghese writes, is intimately bound up with the historicity of the development of English as the official language during the British rule and as an important common medium of expression among the cultured Indians of the time. And uh, for Manjula, she wrote this novel in English because it came out in English. It was not a matter of conscious choice. It came out in English. And she was unable to understand why the intellectuals were unable to understand this simple fact. She was accused of writing for foreign readers as if she had committed some kind of crime. And her British publishers told her that they receive a lot of books that are Indian, but her novel has the genuine Indian feel. Because the other books were written in view with Western readers, but this book was a genuine Indian work. And she finds funny one intellectual said, no Indian writer can express herself or himself honestly in English. And even she points out the allegation of Kendra Sahitya Academy president without naming your Anandamurthy that Indians who write in English are doing this to make money. And her response to this claim is, why not? Isn't that a good enough reason? Would you like to see what royalties I earned when I wrote in Kannada? So, for people like him, so people like you are another Murthy, English is a medium of dishonesty. And the irony is that even your Murthy translated his works into English. Yeah. And later, uh, even others translate some of his works into English. Yeah. So Manjula, who has been struggling in Kannada for so long, um, becomes a sort of spokesperson for Karnad, and he gives a hint to the intention of the critics behind such harsh criticisms. Even writers like Rajarao, so Rajarao in his foreword to Kantapura, argued for using English. And Bhavani Bhattacharya, he was advised by H. Brown and Tagore to write his fiction in English. And uh, writers like Nissim Ezekiel, P. Lal, K. Daruwala, Arvind Krishna Mehrotra, they claim that English was not deliberately chosen or elitist medium, but simply a natural expression of their private and social experience. Yeah, and the similar argument is presented by Manjula. So came naturally. But on the other hand, writers like U.R. Anandamurthy, B. Jayamohan, or Rajendra Yadav, Gurudayal Singh, they made heated charges against English in public forums of all kinds. So Anandamurthy very infamously commented that Indians writing in English were like prostitutes since they wrote with an eye for money and global reach the language offers. And there are many charges against Indian writers who write in English. Some of them are they are ignorant of their language, they lack Indianness, they are ambitiously intended to have wider readership, they wanted to acquire status and so on. And some critics even argue that Bhasha writers are more genuine than Indian English writers in portraying the richness and ethos of English. Bhasha writers എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോഴത്തേക്ക് the regional writers, the Malayalam writers, the Kannada writers, the Hindi writers. And please note that Bhasha writers, this is a term coined by Devi in After Amnesia, and this term was popularized by Mukherjee in The Anxiety of Indians, our novels in English. And in her presentation, in her speech, we can see that the real cause behind the skirmish between regional writers and Indian English writers. So it is obvious that the publishing houses, the question of readership, the economic dimensions of writing, the rewards of literary achievements, public recognition, they stand on sharp contrast in the case of regional writers and Indian English writers. Uh, a person called Ramanarayan, actually, he sheds light on the anguish of regional writers. So he writes um, in uh, in which text? Let me check it. Ramanarayan. Ramanarayan. Yeah, in Outlook, um, he writes that the regional writers remains invisible on the national scene. The media largely ignores him or her unless he or she gets involved in politics or embroiled in controversy. Awards from apex literary bodies are no more than flashes of the day, and writings in Indian languages hardly cross across state borders. So, because of this deprivation, their hearts bleed, and out of rage and jealousy, they brutally criticize for showing their coldness and hostile nature towards others, especially to Indian writers in English. So, this jealousy, the fierce tyrant of the realms of love, as Cervantes called it, or Shakespeare's green eyed monster, this is a ubiquitous emotion that affects human beings in every aspect of relationship. So it has got a darker and a more sinister side. So the darker side of it causes human beings to violently explode or destroy previous harmonious relationship or commit sinful actions. So in Othello's murder of Desdemona or Anna Karenina's suicide and similar other cases, it is evident that jealousy uh, can be extraordinarily destructive. So let me conclude uh, with one quotation from Sylvia Plath. So Sylvia Plath wrote once, I am jealous. those who think more deeply, who write better, who draw better, who ski better, who look better, who live better, who love better than I. And this is more or less applicable to all in this world. So the discord, hate, animosity between Manjula and Marini, Manjula and Pramod, Lucy and Manjula, and the regional language writers and Indian writers in broken images is solely due to jealousy, and eventually it led to enmity and to sinful acts. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that very extensive, profound lecture and your insightful observations on the whole notion of jealousy, especially sibling rivalry, which has been discussed and commented by different theorists, and your observations in different literary works, especially in the context of Girish Karnad's The Broken Images. So you have definitely offered us a new lens, a new perspective from which we can study and examine the vast spans of literature that we have come across. So thank you, sir, once again. And now the floor is open for discussions, comments, questions from the part of the participants. The participants are free to unmute themselves and speak, or you can post your questions in the chat box.
So maybe I will ask the first question. Uh, because it is so interesting to note that this sort of a sibling rivalry is also a metaphor of the larger framework, that is the sibling rivalry of Manjula and Malini is also a metaphor for, well, that's what I understand from your presentation, metaphor for the regional language and English writing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, it's just because uh, such a discussion is there in her presentation.
Mm-hmm.
So she says that, I mean, actually, Manjula, she was questioned by many critics for writing in English. Why not in Kannada? So because of that, um I mean, uh, I connected that with that sibling rivalry. So, those who question Manjula are from regional languages, not from the established Indian English writers. So that's why I connected sibling rivalry with the rivalry between, or the not rivalry, the tussle between Mahasha writers and Indian English writers.
Yeah, that's a very interesting idea.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm sure the scholars will have something to ask you. Okay, maybe I'll keep quiet and they will ask.
So you can approach this play from a different perspective, and this is something that I found interesting. That's why I read that play in this manner, or using the perspective of psychoanalysis. So you can study this play. Uh, I mean, can you explain the title of the play and how it relates to Manjula? Broken Images. Yeah. Actually, Broken Images, the title is taken from um, Wasteland. So, T.S. Eliot's Wasteland. Wasteland, we know that it talks about decay. Um, so, um, here we can see that after that presentation, uh, the image on the screen, it destructs Manjula's identity, or it it totally breaks Manjula. So image, breaking that image. That's why broken images. Or else even we can apply that the same principle, decay of relationship, like a decay of a person. So even in that manner, the title is very apt. Broken images. Odakkalu Bimba, that's the exact Kannada title.
I think it is also because we always have this idea of siblings as and what's it that is siblings as related in such a way that they are so much connected with love,
Yeah,
but that
yeah,
idea, that
yeah.
cliched idea, is
Also,
shattered.
yeah, shattered. Yeah, yeah.
So regarding one of the other plays by Girish Karnad, not the metaphorical implications of jealousy, but sibling rivalry as it is, can we find that in Hayavadana as well?
Actually, there is a connection. There is an intertextual element in this play. So the title, "The River Has No Memories," actually taken from Hayavadana. So Hayavadana, we know that that's the story of uh, Padmini, then and the two characters in it. Uh, Anita, can you name those two characters, the male characters?
Kapila, I think it's
Kapila and Devadatta. Kapila and Devadatta. Yeah. So uh, and in that play is about identity, having or achieving perfection. And here we can see that uh, a perfect image is broken. So Manjula projected herself as a perfect figure, a perfect human being, but the TV.
And Kabila and Devadatta, they are described as brothers. No, Kabila and Devadatta are described in the play as brothers.
Yes,
Even
brothers.
though they
Yeah,
are
yeah,
not brothers, they are
yeah.
uh,
But the
like
entry of
brothers.
Padmini creates a confusion there. Again, we can see that tripartite relationship. So their relationship is broken because of Padmini.
Good evening, sir.
Good
It's
evening.
not a question, it's just an observation. It was very interesting to listen to you, especially talking on human relationship with focus on sibling rivalry, connecting all the theoreticians. And I felt it was a very interesting session, especially in the background of psychoanalysis. You tried to interpret the sibling rivalry. So thank you so much, sir. It was very interesting to listen to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Since, since your presentation was quite clear, I think that is why there are no questions. People are very convinced about what you said. Anita,
yes, ma'am.
you want to say something or
If there are no more further questions,
Okay. No more questions, I guess.
So thank you all. It was definitely Nitin sir. It was great listening to you. We've had a great time listening to you. And thank you for being the resource person for today's lecture and enlightening us on a topic that we were not very familiar with or something that we have not actually thought about in detail. So I guess it'll actually help us in with all our thesis and research work as well. Let me also thank Dr. Betsy Paul, head of the department, for her constant guidance and support. And on behalf of the Aloysius fraternity, let me also thank all the participants of Chrysalis. Especially, we also have faculty from other institutions like Dr. Lena, the retired principal of Government College, Madapalli. She has been a consistent presence throughout all the sessions of Chrysalis. Thank you, ma'am. And thanking you all once again and wishing you a prosperous and peaceful year ahead. We shall meet next Thursday for yet another session of Chrysalis. Thank you all.
Thank you, and a happy new year to all.
Thank you, Nithin.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
മെച്ചൻ്റെ സ്കോളേഴ്സ് ആരെങ്കിലും ഫെലോഷിപ്പ് നോക്കുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഓക്സ്ഫോർഡ് ഇപ്പോൾ ഒരു ഫെലോഷിപ്പ് വിളിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട് കേട്ടോ.
അതെ കുറച്ച് ഇങ്ങനത്തെ കാര്യങ്ങളൂടെ ഇവരോട് പറഞ്ഞു കൊടുക്കുന്നത് നന്നായിരിക്കും. ലൈക്ക് ബിക്കോസ് എയ്ഡഡ് കോളേജസിന് വളരെയധികം ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടുണ്ടാക്കുന്ന സംഭവം അതാണ്. വി ഡോണ്ട് ഗെറ്റ് ദാറ്റ് സോർട്ട് ഓഫ് ഇൻഫർമേഷൻ. എവിടേക്കാണ് സ്കോളർഷിപ്സ് ഉള്ളത്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എങ്ങനെയൊക്കെയാണ് ഓപ്പർച്യൂണിറ്റീസ് ഉള്ളത് എന്നുള്ളത് കിട്ടാനായിട്ട് കുറച്ച് ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ ഒന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കൊടുത്ത